Hello everyone, welcome to Nightmare Nexus, where the darkness comes alive with spine-chilling stories and eerie tales that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Before beginning, please hit the subscribe button to never miss out on new stories. Today we will talk about the disturbing, true, new house horror stories. Before beginning, please hit the subscribe button so that you never miss out on new videos. Our first story is true new house horror stories that will keep you awake tonight. Without further delay, let's get started. For Mia and Daniel, buying their first home was a dream come true. The quaint two-story house sat on the edge of a peaceful cul-de-sac, surrounded by tall oaks and bathed in warm sunlight. With its white picket fence and blooming garden, it seemed like the perfect place to start their new life together. But what they didn't know was that the house held secrets, dark, horrifying secrets that refused to stay buried. The unsettling incidents began on their very first night. As Mia unpacked boxes in the kitchen, she heard a faint scratching noise coming from the walls. Assuming it was mice, she shrugged it off, making a mental note to call an exterminator. But the scratching grew louder and seemed to move, as if something or someone was crawling inside the walls. Meanwhile, Daniel was upstairs setting up their bedroom. He noticed an old dusty mirror leaning against the wall in one of the spare rooms. Oddly, it wasn't there during their initial walkthrough. The ornate antique frame was intricately carved with unsettling depictions of faces twisted in agony. A chill ran down his spine, but he dismissed it as his imagination running wild in the unfamiliar space. That night, the couple lay in bed, trying to adjust to their new surroundings. Around 3 a.m., they were jolted awake by the sound of footsteps echoing down the hallway. Mia clutched Daniel's arm, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. "Yeah," he replied, grabbing the baseball bat he had propped by the bed for emergencies. They tiptoed into the hallway, but it was empty. The footsteps, however, continued, growing fainter as if retreating into the walls. Over the next few days, the disturbances escalated. Objects moved on their own. Picture frames fell from walls without reason. The smell of rotting meat occasionally wafted through the house. Though they couldn't locate its source, Mia began waking up with bruises on her arms and legs, as if someone had gripped her tightly during the night. One evening, as they sat in the living room watching TV, the power suddenly went out. Daniel grabbed a flashlight and headed to the basement to check the fuse box. The air down there was cold and damp, and he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As he approached the fuse box, the beam of his flashlight illuminated a handprint on the concrete wall, a handprint too small to belong to either of them. "Mia!" he called, his voice shaking. But when he turned around, no one was there. He hurried back upstairs, only to find Mia frozen on the couch, her eyes wide with terror. The TV, though unplugged, had turned back on, displaying static and a faint image of a shadowy figure standing behind her. Desperate for answers, the couple began researching the history of their home. What they discovered was chilling. The previous owners had vanished without a trace, leaving all their belongings behind. Neighbors whispered about strange happenings and a tragic past involving a family who lived there decades earlier. According to local lore, the father had gone mad, murdering his wife and children before hanging himself in the attic. Determined to cleanse their home, Mia and Daniel contacted a local priest. Father Andrews arrived with holy water and a Bible, his face grim as he listened to their account. "Evil lingers where blood has been spilled," he said solemnly. As the priest conducted the blessing, the house seemed to resist. Doors slammed shut, windows rattled, and an unearthly growl reverberated through the walls. Then a chilling scream pierced the air, coming from the attic. Armed with courage and desperation, Daniel and Father Andrews ascended the creaky staircase, while Mia waited nervously below. In the attic, they found a makeshift altar surrounded by melted candles and crude symbols, scrawled in what appeared to be blood. At the center lay the antique mirror Daniel had seen earlier. This time, its surface was no longer reflective but black, as if it absorbed all light. As they approached, the temperature plummeted, and a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness within the mirror. The entity let out an ear-piercing shriek, and the room erupted in chaos. Objects flew through the air, the floorboards cracked, and a force slammed Daniel against the wall. Father Andrews began reciting prayers, his voice unwavering despite the violent storm of supernatural energy. The shadowy figure thrashed and writhed, its form distorting as the priest's words grew louder. Finally, with a deafening roar, the entity vanished and the house fell silent. The mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces, leaving behind only an oppressive stillness. Father Andrews, visibly shaken, warned the couple to leave the house immediately. "Some places cannot be saved," he said. Mia and Daniel packed their belongings and left that same night, never looking back. They later learned that the house had been built over an old cemetery, its foundation disrupting the restless spirits buried beneath. Despite their harrowing experience, they were grateful to have escaped with their lives. But even now, in their new home miles away, they sometimes wake up at 3 a.m. to the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway. Before beginning the second story, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so. Our next story is The Cursed Apartment That Won't Let Go. Let's get started. After a messy breakup, Sarah was desperate to start fresh. She found a small, affordable apartment in the heart of the city, nestled in an older building with a certain charm. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Crowley, was eager to rent it out, but seemed oddly hesitant when she signed the lease. "You'll find the place quiet," he said cryptically. Sarah brushed it off, attributing his strange demeanor to his age. But she would soon realize there was much more to the apartment than met the eye. The first few nights were uneventful. Sarah spent her time unpacking and decorating, enjoying the quiet solitude of her new space. But by the fourth night, things took a turn. It started with the sound of faint whispering. At first, she thought it was her neighbors, but the voices were too close, as if they were coming from inside her apartment. She checked every room but found nothing. "It's just my imagination," she told herself. But the whispers grew louder each night, their tone urgent and unintelligible. One evening, Sarah invited her best friend Lisa over for dinner. As they laughed and reminisced, a loud bang echoed from the bedroom. They rushed to investigate and found her closet door wide open. "I swear I closed that earlier," Sarah said nervously. Lisa chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "Maybe your ghost just wants some attention." But Sarah wasn't laughing. She noticed deep scratch marks on the inside of the closet door, marks that hadn't been there before. The next day, Sarah confronted Mr. Crowley about the apartment's history. He avoided her gaze and muttered something about the previous tenant moving out suddenly. "You're better off not knowing," he said before walking away. Frustrated, Sarah turned to the internet, scouring forums and local news archives for information. She discovered that her apartment had a dark past. 3 tenants had lived there in the past decade, each disappearing without a trace. Police investigations turned up nothing, and the cases remained unsolved. As the nights wore on, the apartment's eerie atmosphere intensified. Lights flickered unpredictably. Objects moved on their own. One night, Sarah woke up to find her bedroom door slowly creaking open. She froze, her heart racing, as she stared into the darkness beyond. Then she saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. Paralyzed with fear, Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, praying it was a nightmare. When she opened them again, the figure was gone. But the whispering was louder than ever, filling the room with a cacophony of chilling voices. Desperate for help, Sarah contacted a paranormal investigator named Mark, who agreed to visit the apartment. Armed with equipment, Mark set up cameras and audio recorders throughout the space. "Whatever's here doesn't want you to stay," he said after reviewing the initial recordings. The audio captured chilling voices saying, "Leave or stay forever." Mark suggested performing a cleansing ritual, but the activity only escalated. Doors slammed shut, the temperature plummeted, and an unseen force knocked over furniture. The shadowy figure appeared again, this time rushing toward Mark before vanishing into thin air. That night, Sarah had a terrifying dream. In it, she saw a woman sitting in the corner of her bedroom, her face obscured by matted hair. The woman rocked back and forth, muttering, "He won't let me go. He won't let me go." When Sarah approached, the woman's head snapped up, revealing hollow black eyes. Sarah woke up screaming, her heart pounding. But the nightmare wasn't over. On her wall, scrawled in what looked like blood, were the words, "He's coming." Unable to endure the terror any longer, Sarah packed her belongings and fled the apartment. She stayed with Lisa while searching for a new place. However, the whispers followed her. No matter where she went, she could hear faint voices, always just out of reach. One day, Lisa found Sarah staring blankly at the wall, her face pale and her hands trembling. "He won't let me go," she whispered. Lisa called Mark, who returned to investigate. But by the time he arrived, Sarah had disappeared without a trace. Months later, a new tenant moved into the cursed apartment. On their first night, they found a message carved into the closet door. "You're next. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into the cursed apartment that refuses to let go of its victims." If this story gave you goosebumps, make sure to hit the like button and share it with your friends who love a good scare. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss another terrifying tale. Have you ever experienced something similar? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, sleep tight if you can.